Hello, this is Ward Marston, and I'm back again with another video. This time I'd like to talk to you about Conchita Supervia, probably my favorite singer. Conchita Supervia was probably I would say a singer with the most personality of anyone I can think of. As a matter of fact, personality is really what separates her from just about any other singer. She had a great voice. She had a very good, if not perfect, not a perfect technique, but a very fine technique. She had extremely good coloratura ability, and in her day was really the only mezzo-soprano who was singing coloratura music. But we'll get to that later. But really what separates Supervia is the fact that she integrates her personality into everything she sings. And she is completely recognizable from one or two notes, and everything she sings, you feel that she actually is the character that she's singing. Not unlike Calvé, of course, a very different voice from Calvé, but Supervia has that kind of style and, as I said, character and personality. Supervia was born in 1895 in Barcelona, and she made her debut, her international debut, in Buenos Aires at the Colón in 1910. That means she was 14 years old, and sang a performance, among other lesser-known operas. She actually sang Santuzza in Cavalleria Rusticana. Can you imagine that? 15 years old singing Santuzza. And she got very, very good reviews. The next year, in 1911, she turned up in Italy and actually ended up singing Octavian in Rosenkavalier at the Costanzi in Rome. Here she's 15 years old, or perhaps 16, and singing Octavian, who is supposed to be about 17. So here's a situation where a singer is actually younger than the character she's singing, and that almost never happens in opera. But she got excellent reviews there, and in the next 10 years or so, she was singing mostly in Italy and Spain, but she did sing for a season in Chicago. Now, what's interesting about her Chicago career, or Chicago year, was that she got good reviews, good notices. Everybody liked her. They thought she was a charming and a very sweet Carmen, and a very fine Delilah in Samson et Dalila of Saint-Saëns. But she didn't get raves. But when the raves started were really in the 20s, and she began to do Rossini revivals at La Scala in 1926, 27, and 28, and she sang Cenerentola and Italian Girl in Algiers, and Rosina in The Barber, and also such popular operas as Hansel and Gretel. I didn't mean to lump that in with Rossini, but that's one of the other operas she sang. And she also, again, by the way, at La Scala, sang Octavian in Der Rosenkavalier with great success in the late 20s. Her career began to move north at that point, and she conquered Paris mostly with Carmen, but also with Mignon. And Paris absolutely gave her the most rave reviews that you can possibly imagine. And at the same time, she was beginning to perform more as a concert artist, because Supervia loved singing songs, and especially the Spanish repertoire. And from the late 20s until her death in 1936, at the premature age of 40, she divided her career between opera and concert, and perhaps even was more known and better known as a concert singer. Because unlike some opera singers, such as Mary Garden and Maria Callas, for example, Supervia really loved the concert platform, and used every possible would I say, used costume changes, and she would have scenery on stage for different groups of songs and that sort of thing. So she really took to the concert platform and got great reviews wherever she went. Interestingly enough, that you'll notice on recordings, and people complain sometimes about this, that Supervia's vibrato is rather overpowering and rather annoying to listen to. And yet when you read reviews of the times, it is mentioned, but usually in an offhanded way, and say, well, the reviewers, critics would say, well, sometimes we noticed a little bit excessive amount of vibrato. But it was never actually criticized. And people who heard her in the house always said that the vibrato didn't come through in the house the way it does on records. However, most of us collectors who love Supervia find everything about her utterly beguiling. And there isn't a singer that I can think of that sings with such charm and sincerity and great musicianship. Conchita Supervia recorded 200 sides, if you can believe that. It's just amazing. Between 1927 and 1933. It's actually amazing to me that she didn't make any records earlier. Actually, she did make a test for Edison, but Edison's comments don't survive, although I would love to know what Edison said about her, because as we all know, Thomas Edison despised singers who had strong, as he called it, tremolo. And I think that Supervia would have been a great disappointment to Edison. And as it happened, he didn't issue the test that she made for him. Sadly, the test has not survived. But it is amazing, considering that her career was on the rise during the teens and the early 20s, and that no acoustic recordings were made by the European companies. But her first records were made for Fonotipia in 1927, and she continued to record for Spanish and French Odeon and Parlophone through 1932. And then in 1933, she made a series of records from the opera Frasquita, Lehar's Frasquita, for the Ultraphone label. We have already produced 2 volumes of Supervia recordings. Volume 1 we produced in 2006, and Volume 1 contained her 1927 and 28 recordings. And Volume 2 we produced in 2007, and that takes us up through 1930. And this third volume takes us from 1930 to 1932. Next year, in 2009, we are planning the 4th and final volume of Supervia, which will be 1932 and 33 recordings. And I'm very pleased to say that out of the 200 records, 200 sides that she made, we have found everything except 4. And I am very optimistic that by next year, we will have found the 4 missing titles. To make up for the fact that we are still missing 4, we have issued several previously unpublished titles of hers. And it's very difficult for me to pick out records to play, because every time I try to make a decision about which Supervia record would be appropriate, it always turns out to be the last one I've heard. It almost doesn't matter, because they're all so good. She didn't make a bad record, and she didn't make any records that weren't effective in their own way. They all demonstrate a certain kind of vocal technique, whether it be florid coloratura ability, or a pianissimo singing, or some sort of effective way of putting across a song, whether it be a sweet song or whether it be a more acerbic song.